fights that are for the upcoming year, and some of these fights are very exciting. Let me try and put this camera down here on this phone. It's relatively steady. So let's talk about some of these upcoming fights that are pretty interesting, and I think worth talking about. Some of them may not come to fruition, some of them may. All right. So the first one is we're talking about Kambosos versus Devin Haney or Vasily Lomachenko. That fight is a very possibility. It's now narrowed down to two sets of people. I think Devin Haney is going to get the fight with Kambosos, so I'm looking forward to that. Also, as you see in the title, Mickey Bey may be facing Tevin Farmer next. And that's an interesting fight in the sense that Mickey Bey's very old. And Tevin Farmer, yeah, he's a veteran of the sport, but he's much younger. Um, so that's an interesting matchup as well. And then, of course, we're hearing talks about Demetrius Andrade facing possibly David Benavidez. I think David Benavidez will be a willing participant versus Demetrius Andrade. That would be a great fight to have happen. It's not finalized or anything. It just talks about it. So I would love to see that. Demetrius Andrade versus David Benavidez would be a hell of a fight. And I just would love to see that. Jamal Charlo versus Canelo is in talks. I don't know how finalized it is. That's a solid fight as well. And absolutely 100%. I know that Demetrius Andrade has vacated his championship position as WBO champion at 160. So he is now going up to 168. So the 168-pound division just got super, super red hot all of a sudden. If Charlo and Andrade do go into that division and face, say, Canelo or David Benavidez, that would be great. Okay. Um, Now, none of those fights we just talked about are finalized. However, Jamal Charlo's brother, Jamel Charlo, has finalized his rematch against Brian Castano. So that is definitely on the cards. That's definitely going to happen, and that's exciting to know. Of course, the other very exciting fight to talk about, and we talked about it before, was Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano. That's going down, and press conference and everything for that. Um, on the undercard, I believe, of Keith Thurman versus Mario Barrios, I believe Leo Santa Cruz is fighting again. So he's going to be also fighting on the undercard. That's going to be an exciting fight with lots of fireworks. And I think Leo Santa Cruz is facing. I'm not too sure if I'm right or wrong here, but I believe he's facing. Um, uh, I forgot his name. The famous fighter. It's alright. Waiting for some comes to me. But anyway, it's a nephew of a famous fighter, which is really cool. So I'm interested in seeing that. Some other upcoming fights that I think are interesting. Oh, I need to recap a fight that happened over the weekend, or not over the weekend, over this week, with Luis Ortiz versus uh, Luis Ortiz. He faced the southpaw guy. I forgot what his name is. So it was two southpaws in the ring. It was really great. It's a fantastic fight, actually. Well, I can never remember his name. He faced Anthony Joshua. He was the IBF champion, and so on and so on. Anyway, uh, Luis Ortiz got dropped. Now, at first, I thought he dropped the gentleman in the first round, but it was really slick. And then the gentleman came back and knocked down Luis Ortiz twice. He knocked him down in the second round, and then he knocked him down again. Oh, actually, it's three times, I think. Later on in the fight with a jab, and was really doing very well. And then Luis Ortiz caught him with a beautiful, I think it was a left hand. I think it was a straight left or something, but he really caught him. And the guy didn't know where he was or anything, and eventually they got to stop it. And it was fantastic because it was this toing and throwing. And there was a fight before that with heavyweights as well. Two, I guess European dudes, and they were just knocking each other down. Back and forth, back and forth. It was pretty interesting. It's like Wilder versus Fury has led to all of these knockdown fights. But that was exciting. Now, I just wanted to mention that. His name came to me and then it popped back out of my other it'll come to me. But I just wanted to mention that. In addition, I want to talk to you guys about one more thing, and then I'm going to call it a night, and that is um, they're talking about Ryan Garcia versus a no-name guy. I don't know who that guy is, and so I'm not really interested in that fight. But there is another upcoming fight that I think is very interesting. Um, excuse me. Uh, Tyson Fury, of course, versus Dillian White is still on the cards. Anthony Joshua versus Alexander Usyk. I don't know if they have a date. Hey man, that'd be cool. But there's one more fight I think that I'm supposed to talk about. I just can't remember it right now. But when I do, I'm gonna definitely talk to you guys about it. But yeah, that's it for upcoming fights as well. So I wanted to share that with you guys. This is what you need in the building. Oh, okay, okay. So they were talking about Mayweather facing possibly Canelo or Terrence Crawford, which I just think is ludicrous. I think I don't care how good he looks in the gym, those guys are going to just butcher him. Um, Canelo's much bigger guy. If Floyd has to face him, it's 168. You're talking about, and I don't care how good Floyd looks. He's an older guy, and once Canelo starts, working that body, he's going to beat him down. And it's just tremendous size difference. Okay, and then Terrence Crawford or Jerome Ennis or Errol Spence. These guys are young, man. You have to understand that in boxing, there's certain laws and rules, and yeah, Floyd may know a lot of stuff, but if you're not smart in boxing, why would you put yourself into harm's way? I don't care how much money it is. Your health is more important. Why would you put yourself into harm's way? Uh, Physically take a lot of punishment to win a fight. It makes no sense. You're not in your prime. Boxing is a young guy sport. Older guys can do some things, but you again, you saw what happened to Evander Holyfield. You don't need that. You don't need that. So I wouldn't put Floyd in there with some young guy. I would if you put him in with a contemporary like Oscar De La Hoya. Oscar was reaching out to Floyd and talking about a possible fight. I was seeing Mickey Bey and Company Limited talking about maybe a rematch with Manny Pacquiao. Those are all great fights, exhibition or otherwise. Also, I'll put it to you this way, okay? If you're going back in the ring with somebody else who is your age or more, um, and maybe also hasn't been, as active in pro sports, it's okay because both of you would have been sort of in a similar position. You wanna you wanna match people up with their eras. You don't want to see. This is the thing about boxing, okay? And I keep on explaining it to different people, and they never quite understand. So I'm gonna try and explain it the best that I can. Boxing is a sport where, okay, you match up your era with people of your era. You don't match up with people outside of your era, younger, especially younger people. This is why when we talk about fantasy matches, like you know, Sugar Ray Robinson versus a Terrence Crawford, it's kind of ludicrous. It's kind of stupid. It's kind of disrespectful because Terrence Crawford is in a totally different era to Sugar Ray Robinson. It's just what it is. It's disrespectful. It's particularly that Sugar Ray Robinson laid the foundation for Terrence Crawford. You know what I mean? So it's kind of disrespectful to do that. If Terrence Crawford wants to say he's better than Sugar Ray Robinson, why not? I mean, I can respect that. But to say we're going to match up guys from different eras, it's not really the best thing in the world. Because what made The boxers who they are today are the boxers of yesteryear. That's the guys they used to watch. That's the guys they used to idolize. So it'll be completely, it would be completely disrespectful to pit a boxer of a later era against a boxer of an earlier era, because that boxer of the later era actually drew all his information, a lot of his information and inspiration and so on from the boxers of eras past. So that's why you don't really see a lot of boxers fighting their heroes. When Larry Holmes beat, God forbid, he beat uh, Muhammad Ali, he went into the dressing room and he cried. When Rocky Marciano beat the great Joe Louis, he cried because that's your hero. That's the guy you looked up to. There's nothing, you're not going to get any, especially the fact that, okay, Rocky Marciano and, I'm sorry, Muhammad Ali and um, Joe Louis, they were past their best, right? Obviously. And so it really, it hurts. You know what I'm saying? Sugar Ray Robinson, he didn't try to knock out Henry Armstrong. He carried him the entire fight because that was his hero. That was a guy that paved the way for him to be where he's at. So you have to understand why people in boxing, particularly, don't go saying, well, what would happen if this guy faced that guy? It's a bit disrespectful, especially when these guys paved the way for that boxer to be where they're at today. That boxer is benefiting from things that the other boxers opened the doors for. So it's why hypothetical fights. I know fans do it. I know fans do it, and it's okay. But in the boxing community, among boxers, it's not something that boxers do. They don't say, "Well, if I was to fight this guy, I'd beat him." They don't say that stuff. You'll notice that. Now, Roberto Duran, he could say it because he's of a bygone era. So that you find that the older boxers, they would say, "I would beat this guy." Now, mind you, every boxer is going to tell you that, who's a champion or has been a winner, because every boxer has that kind of mindset. So every boxer is going to tell you, I'll beat him. I'll beat him. Because it's a certain mindset you have to have, right? So if you ask the boxer's going to tell you, "Oh, man, I'm going to beat that guy. I'm going to knock him out," right? But by and large, boxers, the older guys know. They know what they see. They know when, they're really great fighters. Now, this is another thing. Because certain fighters don't get the shine that they deserve. Period. And I'm going to call some fighters that some of you are going to be like, who? Okay. So, have you ever heard of Bruno Arcari? Bruno Arcari is a fighter in the 1970s. And he was an undefeated champion. He was a Italian undefeated champion. He was a Italian undefeated super lightweight champion. Okay? He was around the time of Nicolino Loche, for those of you who know Nicolino Loche is. And they never faced each other. Here's another one. Eusebio Pedroza. He was a Panamanian fighter, great fighter, featherweight fighter, and he was around the time of Salvador Sanchez. Undefeated champion until I think he was beaten by somebody. I can't remember who it is. Now, you don't remember those guys, okay? You won't remember a guy like Ernesto Marcel. That's one of my favorite fighters ever. He died in 2020. Very sad that he died that year. 2020 took a lot of people. Kobe Bryant, Roger Mayweather, and also my boy Ernesto Marcel. They all died that year. But more importantly, Ernesto Marcel was a spectacular boxer to watch. Eusebio Pedraza was, you know, he was, what should I say? He was great technically, but he wasn't necessarily the most exciting guy. But Ernesto Marcel was very exciting to watch. Very exciting boxer. And he got robbed and all kinds of things happened. But my point being, You guys don't remember these guys. You don't hear about these guys. You don't. There's a lot of really great boxers. I mean, great. I mean, great. Like they should be in the International Boxing Hall of Fame. And none of you will ever hear their names. And that disappoints me. And this is why, you know, it hurts me to say that boxing is sort of fickle in the sense that fans forget so quickly. And fans go with the end thing, especially casual fans. And even hardcore boxing fans, you don't see them really emphasizing on certain fighters. They emphasize on certain fighters, but they don't emphasize on other fighters. And it's really sad. And some of these fighters are phenomenal fighters. Some of them are not that pleasing. Like, Bruno Arcari wasn't the most pleasing guy to watch. But, because I thought he was a little bit sloppy. He was a southpaw. But the point is that you don't know these guys. And so that's why I started my series, Boxers Not Talk Much About. And I'm going to try and get that back for the education of people because so many beautiful boxers out there and beautiful boxers through the history of boxing. Glove boxing. I'm not going to talk about bare knuckle brawl. It's just not. But the glove boxing, I just love to talk about that. And there's a lot of great boxers. And some people, they look at me and they're like, you're just a fan of this boxer and that boxer. I am a fan of different boxers. Don't get it twisted. I don't consider myself a connoisseur or anything like that. I believe that I should be able to like a boxer because of how he boxes. I think once I keep it boxing, it should be okay to do that. I usually have reasons why I like boxers. So it's okay to like boxers. And you should. It's healthy. And now let me just say this. It's healthy if you like a certain boxer and you're a fan of boxing. That's what boxing is about. You have to have fans to be able to go to the fights to go see the boxers. So why not? So it's okay. It's okay to be a fan. And even if you don't have a reason, you just like the boxer personality, whatever that makes you like them, whatever. Um, but the point I'm making is that at the end of the day, there's a lot of boxers you guys don't know about, footage of boxes and everything, and some of them are just beautiful to watch. From all over the world, by the way. And I just feel like we're cutting ourselves short. How many of you know about Carlos Ortiz? Who, I'm not talking about Luis Ortiz. I'm not talking about a Cuban boxer. I'm talking about a Puerto Rican boxer, Carlos Ortiz. Fantastic boxer. Um, he had his fights against Dudio and Ishmael Laguna. He had his little series going on with those two, but just fantastic boxers again. Sugar Ramos, Emil Griffith, you know. So I'm just saying this to tell you guys that there's a lot to boxing and a lot of beautiful boxers out there. And you should get to know as many of them as you can. If you're a student of the sport and you enjoy the sport a lot, you should get to know as many boxers as you can. Now, some people, they like the smaller weight classes. Me, I like all weight classes. Once you're a phenomenal fighter, and I find that, you do phenomenal things. And the thing about it is, a lot of boxers today are doing phenomenal things, more phenomenal things than ever before. And it's actually harder to do certain of these phenomenal things. Like, for example, to be undisputed now is very, very difficult. You have to gather 4 different belts just to be undisputed. Back in the day, it was just 2. It was either the NYSEC and the NBA or the WBC and the WBA. It was just 2. Yeah, there were some other belts, but more or less it was 2. And it moved from 2 to 3, and now it's 4. So, it's a little bit tougher to become undisputed, especially if nobody has gathered all the belts. And so a lot of people don't realize how much work it takes to become undisputed today versus how much work it took to be undisputed in yesteryear. So these are some of the things that, I like to emphasize when I'm talking about boxing history and so on. But I was putting forth this point because I was talking about how boxers of yesteryear are very important. If you didn't have the boxers of yesteryear, you couldn't have the boxers of today. And I think what a lot of the OGs are trying to say is these guys are relevant. These guys are important. I was talking to Darian Dobson a while ago. He's in a group, boxing pugilism, boxing history and pugilism, and I'm part of that group. And he was talking about how nothing's new in boxing today. That all the techniques and stuff are not new, and there are no new techniques, and that's not true. But what he was kind of highlighting to me is that boxers yesteryear weren't just simpletons. They weren't just bare knuckle brawls. Weren't or bare knuckle boxing wasn't just some simpleton thing. They had some technique. They had some skill, and I'm not denying that. I'm not denying they had technique and skill. My thing is that it was still primitive compared to what boxing is today. Now, boxing today is more of a sport than it was back then. Back then, it was more like MMA, and he doesn't like me saying that, but it's true. Um, and the thing about boxing today and boxing generally is boxers constantly, whether they're teachers, trainers, whatever they are, they're constantly actually drawing from past boxing. And this is the thing that I think the OGs are trying to say. We need to give credit to the older boxers. I agree, 100%. Um, but I try to get all of these people to realize that the sport has evolved, and in what you may have had a certain taste, or you may have found certain things exciting, or the casual fan may have found certain things exciting in boxing, and you don't get that kind of excitement anymore. It's because there are two reasons. One is they say boxers don't take enough risk. No, they take risks. They take a lot of risk, but they're calculated risks. Boxers are more calculated today. The other thing is boxers today are so much more sharper at what they do than yesteryear. And again, OGs will argue with me about this, and I'm an OG myself, but nonetheless, they're going to argue with me about this. And I show them how that is so. And I just go into the techniques, I go into the training, I go into the systematics of it. And then they begin to realize, yes, this guy knows what he's saying. Um, I am one of those people who don't believe in just speaking dogmas, and crowning certain people as the greatest of all time and all these kinds of crazy things without you looking at the facts of the matter and looking at how things have changed since that point. And it's very important to understand how dynamic boxing is. Boxing is constantly changing. And yes, um, there's a lot of trainers in boxing who don't know what they're doing. But usually those trainers don't produce elite boxers, right? The elite boxers in boxing are about less than 1% of the complete boxing, certified boxing body, okay? It's not easy to become an elite boxer. And there's only a handful of them. And of those elite fighters, only a handful of those actually make the big bucks, okay? So ultimately, in the end, what I'm saying is, it's not a fly by night thing that you get these trainers that pop up, these great trainers or these good trainers. They have been trained by either other trainers or they've actually boxed themselves and therefore have seen other fighters and also have learned from other trainers, senior trainers, because it's kind of like apprenticeship. You couple up with a trainer who really knows his stuff when you're a trainer. So we see a lot of parent trainers, but those parent trainers actually coupled up with other known trainers, whether it's in the amateurs or in the pros, and then they learned the sport with their children. So you have to understand all of this is part of it. And some of these people have a history with boxing, some of them don't. So what I'm trying to say is because of the way how succession happens in boxing, you're always going to have a reliance on the past. It's not just in film studies and all those things, but also in terms of passing down knowledge from one generation to the next. It's always going to happen. Um, so I just thought I would share that with you guys, as well as understanding that people are not brain dead either. They're gonna take certain things and build on certain things in boxing. So this is what has been happening over the period of time. Yes, you don't get that much. You don't get the kind of excitement that you used to get back in the day. In the '80s particularly, you don't get that kind of excitement. The boxers are not as much of an entertainer as the boxers of the past. I give you that. But
the sport of itself has risen by miles in terms of the way all these guys conduct themselves in the ring. So this is what I got to say for you guys. What you need is getting out of here now. I'm gonna talk some film a little bit later, because I'm so happy I'm farting. I'm going to talk a little bit of film later, and I'm also going to try to spend a little bit more time with you guys on one or two more things before I go to sleep. Uh, the virus has been interesting. I'm not too sure if it's COVID-19 I have, which version, if it's Delta or Omicron. I'm not too sure. I think I have COVID-19, but I'm not sure. But it could be the flu that's going around as well. But what I do know is, so far, thank God, this is the fourth day. At the end of the fourth day, going into the fifth, it has been managed relatively well. I'm so happy, that I can breathe through my nose. My nose was runny at a certain point in time. Then my throat, first the top of my throat started itching, and then the lower part of my throat started to itch, get irritated, and I would cough, cough, cough. And now it's kind of ending as I speak to you guys. We'll see what happens actually ultimately in the end. But if I can get some sleep tonight, because most of my nights I didn't really get good sleep. I did get sleep, but I didn't get good sleep. So hopefully tonight you guys can pray for me and make sure I get good sleep. I'm going to talk to you guys later. I'm what you need. Peace.